Hi, this is Paul Hitchcock, founder and president of Giant Jacks Media. This is Giant TV. Really excited for my guest today, and thanks for being here. I've got David Braun, who is many things. David is the founder and CEO for Capstone and focused on strategic growth plans, very hot area for businesses. He's an author, also a top Vistage speaker. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Paul. Nice to have this conversation. Like you said, it's timely for a lot of folks today. So delighted to be with you today.
Absolutely. And then we have Karene Richards-Wise, who is a successful Vistage chair, building an incredible practice, entrepreneur in her own right with her business, a fitness business. Hello, Karene. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's jump into this. David, we're going to start with you. If you could just, for our audience here, give us a little bit of background about what you're doing, your process there, and I'd love to hear more about it.
Thanks. I appreciate that. So just, the 40,000 foot level,
Yeah.
I started the company 28 years ago, really with one concept in mind, and that's to help companies to grow, primarily through external means, acquisitions, joint ventures, strategic alliances, minority investments, and in some cases, divestitures. But it's all really focused on what is it that we're trying to do, how do we get to the next level, and who are the companies that might help us to get there. And what are the real criteria that would say this is the right kind of company or the best company? Not just companies that are for sale or available, but companies that we really think are going to be a good fit for us. So we're very, very kind of niche and strategic in finding that kind of needle in the haystack, if you will, the proverbial needle in the haystack, and very focused on, that privately held, not for sale, but very, very strong fit company.
What'd you do? Coming out of the gates when you started the business, I mean, was it you had zero clients and it was just go from that point? And did you focus on that niche right out of the gates?
I did. I had a background in boutique investment banking, and then I got recruited to go work in-house for a company, and I started with one client. And I was just very passionate about, the idea that companies need help thinking about where to go. For most companies, the challenge is not lack of ideas.
Right.
The challenge is lack of focus. How do we really focus in on finding these right companies and then moving them forward? And there's a real, it's a lot of pick and shovel work. It's not easy to do, and it takes a lot of time and discipline. Conversely, what people end up doing is they react to people that come to them or companies that are for sale. And so they will, somebody will say, hey, we got this great idea and let's talk about doing some things together. And so they'll react to those things and they'll say, well, that could make sense. Or maybe it's a for sale company that's presented to them. Yeah, maybe that, let's figure out if we can make that work. Well, what if we took a different approach? And what if we started with what do we want? And probably the best analogy that I can give for folks, I'll give you two. One is when you're thinking about hiring a new CFO or fill in the blank, any position. Do you just want people that are out there that are unemployed, i.e. for sale? Or do you want to really say, hey, here are the criteria that we're looking for that we think this CFO position really needs? And because, by the way, the CFO position at this company is going to be different than another company, right? Based upon maybe what they do or how big they are, how sophisticated or complex. Or, do you want to say, hey, no, these are the things that we specifically want, and let's go find that person. And the idea, to put it in kind of the same analogy, if I go and I find someone who is working already in an organization and I convince them to leave a presumably good job and want to come work for my organization, the CFO, that's a not for sale transaction. So that's kind of the same analogy that we would have. Let's go find that good company. Let's go find what it is that we're looking for. Maybe some of them, maybe the CFO that you find happens to be in between jobs. Maybe it's not. Yeah. And the same thing with companies. The second analogy I would give you is buying a house. Let's say you want to buy a house. Well, maybe you have a very specific house that you're looking for. So are you only going to be limited to ones that are for sale? Or maybe you're so focused on it, you're either going to wait or you're going to knock on doors and say, hey, if you're interested in selling your house, come talk to me. And that's kind of the way we would think of it. Like maybe there's a very specific neighborhood or location or school district, or you want a first floor master bedroom. We're going to say, let's go find that house and let's convince that owner to consider selling their house to you.
It's a great analogy. Yeah, resonates. And Karene, I don't want to steal your thunder because I got questions, but I want to let you go first. If you want to jump in, you got anything swimming around there for him?
Yeah, well, I was going to tell you a little bit about my practice and get the introductions out of the way. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Let's hear about your practice. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I lead a platinum level invitation only as CEO peer advisory group. I help CEOs achieve more. I have experienced a lot of achievement in my own career. I was named top 100 most influential people of African descent by the United Nations in 2019. Not sure if I ever shared that with you before,
It's
Paul.
awesome. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was a former CEO of the Association for Women in Science, and now I'm the finance chair of that organization. And the other fun fact that I love to talk about is that I'm also an FBB Bikini Pro, ranked 13th best over 40 bikini physique in the world. So I've achieved a lot in a number of different areas, whether it is in fitness, in investment banking, or as a CEO. And what I'm trying to do is put a group together. I'm here basically in the Washington, D.C. area to help other CEOs achieve more in their health, in their personal life, and in their business. So just wanted to just get that introduction out of the way to let everyone know what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I love it. We're going to come back to that in a big way. And I can tell everybody here listening that, yeah, Karene's my go-to for my exercise and eating routine. And she's in my face constantly about that. So I'm accountable to that. So yeah, so David, wait, like, how does it work when you're going into a business? Are you working with the owner of the business, the whole management team? Like, what does that look like? Is it just a big scrum, like get everyone together initially?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of the things that kind of traditionally happens is it'll often be the CEO and the CFO that kind of concoct this idea of we want to go do this and we're going to go find these companies, and then we find them, they go and make transactions, and then they bring it back to everybody, and everybody's sort of like, now what do I do?
Right.
And I call it parachuting in. One of the things that I have found in my career is I think there's a better way of doing it, and that is, let's make sure that we involve the key people in the process of our business early on. And let me jump ahead and then I'll come back. One of the most difficult parts of transactions, whether it be a full-out acquisition or minority investment or other type of joint venture, regardless of kind of that transaction focus, one of the absolute hardest parts, bar none, is integration.
Mm.
So guess what happens on integration? Who's involved in integration? It's all those key leadership people, right?
Right.
The CEO and the CFO play a role, but the real, day-to-day stuff tends to happen with the operational people. So the way I like to focus it is I think about those 5 or maybe 6 key people that report to the CEO that are very instrumental in running the business, that often have really good insights about, hey, how can we take this business and grow it? Because in many cases, what we're talking about is taking good businesses and making them better, or taking good businesses and making them even great. And many times the people who are already part of that organization, if you don't get their buy-in and input, you're going to have a really difficult time being successful in integration. So to answer your very specific question is, we don't just do it as a scrum. We don't just do it as a 1 or 2 people. It's a little bit of a blend. We want to make sure we've got an organized process to be really thinking about what is it that first of all, what is it that we have to leverage? What is it that makes us interested in thinking about external growth? What would an ideal company look like? Very specific, not just I know it when I see it, but let's talk about size and location and capabilities and maybe brand and customers. And then when we find them, what's going to be important to us in terms of what we can afford, what's going to be important for due diligence, what's going to be important in terms of negotiation process. For example, do we want the leadership and ownership team of that company to stay on as part of what we're looking for people? And how would we think about integrating this company? So if we go find this ideal company, what are you going to do from an integration standpoint? And don't tell me you don't know, and you'll know when you get there. You still should be able to talk today in concepts and structural foundations to be able to say, hey, in an ideal world, if we found that company, this is what we would do with operations. This is what we would do with brand. This is what we do with accounting. This is what we do with sales and marketing. This is what we would do with IT department, and so forth. So that's a bit about how we think about it. So it's a very disciplined process in terms of what it is that we want and how do we go and find that, and then how do we make that be successful.
So let's peel back a few layers, David, because you've spoken to our group before, and our members got a lot of value from hearing you speak with our group. One of the things I took away was you do a very good job of just breaking down the options that are available to CEOs looking to grow their revenue. Everyone wants to grow their revenue. I haven't spoken to a CEO that's not concerned about growth and increase in revenue. And you laid out a few options that a CEO should be considering, right? Could you just give us a bullet point options that CEOs should be considering when they're thinking about growing their business?
Absolutely. First of all, Karene, thank you for that compliment. I've enjoyed working with your members, and they've got a lot of energy about growth, that's for sure. So, and obviously your leadership is helping them on that. So when I think about growth, again, I go back to kind of traditional thinking. Many owners, I think, can feel trapped because they feel like they either have to do it themselves, i.e. organic growth, or they have to go buy somebody. The organic side, they understand. The other side gets a little bit intimidating. But we really have a lot more options in that. First, high level, 5 options. One is I can do it organically. I can do it myself. I can hire people. I can expand my product offering. I can expand where I'm physically located. I mean, there's things that I can do organically myself, and that's what got most companies to where they are today. Tends to be the lowest risk, and it's the one that we're most comfortable with. But sometimes that plateaus, and we get to a point where there isn't a lot more opportunity for us, or it's going to take us too long, and maybe we feel like we're going to miss out on opportunities. So the second option to think about is external growth. And within external growth, we really have 11 different options. So it isn't just that I can acquire a company. Think about it from the pendulum of I have a partnership with no equity all the way to the point where I have 100% equity. And there's all kinds of things that go on in between. Strategic alliances, joint ventures, minority investments where I own less than 50%, majority minority investments where I own more than 50%, but they own a significant amount of the business. I can look at doing franchising or licensing or marketing agreements. So there are a lot of different ways that I can be thinking about within external growth, ways to be growing. Doesn't mean I just have to go out, and buy 100% of a company. The third option is I can think about ways to become what I like to call the jellyfish. And what does that mean? It means I got to really focus in on being a low-cost provider. Why is that? So that I can survive. And I call it the jellyfish because, as the tide comes in, the jellyfish come in. As the tide goes out, the jellyfish go out. They don't have a lot of natural predators. But it means I need to be focused on making sure I've got the right employees, the right location, the right CapEx investments, the things that are going to make sure that I can be efficient. It's separate from organic growth. It's really about allowing me to be sustainable for how the markets are moving. The fourth option is to divest. And divest could mean I stop doing some things. And maybe I've taken my company as far as I can, and it's time to hitch to, a new team of horses. Or maybe there's parts of my business that I don't need to be doing anymore. Just because I've always done it that way doesn't mean I have to continue with that. And then the fifth option is to do nothing. And sometimes that's exactly the right thing. Let's just lay low. Let's not get too crazy. Let's wait till things settle down a little bit. But let's be intentional about that. Let's make sure that we've thought through that. And are we missing opportunities, or are we just avoiding the conversation about doing something or not doing something? So those would be what I would characterize as the kind of that master plan of thinking about what your 5 options for growth are. And now the challenge for a lot of owners is, how do we start figuring this out? And that's really where we get to that inflection point.
Braun, you're on mute.
What I'd like to do is to take these 5 points, right, and just dissect them in the next few minutes, right? So the organic growth, CEOs, we know what to do with that, right? That part we can do with our eyes closed.
And let me just interrupt if I could, because today I just want to highlight a couple things today that we're seeing people really be focused in on. A lot of it is around technology. How do we bring technology and automation to what we're doing? So it's automation, data analytics, predictive modeling, machine learning, cybersecurity, all the things that where we can use technology to help us be better at what we're doing and not only reduce costs, but be more efficient about where we're spending our time and resources.
Now, your point on the technology, is that related to point number 1 or point number 3? Because you mentioned fish. Pardon me?
Organic.
Organic. Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy we made that distinction because our last episode was exactly on AI. So our viewers are very aware of how strongly we feel about that.
Yeah. And Karene, just to add to that, it could be that you're going to have to partner with someone to be able to make some of those things happen. So it's not that these things are only in one category, but what today we're starting with is, for many companies, the organic growth opportunity around using technology tools that maybe they haven't used in the past. Let me give you a very simple example. A restaurant that can bring in online ordering, online payment, and takeout and delivery, right? So if you can automate that, as opposed to someone calling in, taking an order, and you have to write down the credit card. But if you can automate that component, you have the ability to capture more business. I mean, very simple example, but that would be one where an organization can do that themselves. It isn't that they have to go make an acquisition. They can use those tools to improve what they're currently doing right now.
I like it. So in terms of external growth, right? Could you just break down the options that you mentioned on external growth? I wanted to dive into that because one of the points I remember you making with external growth is, say your company is not good in one particular area, right? And it makes sense to acquire an organization that's in a strong area that you're not really good at, right? Mm-hmm. Let's take technology, for example, where you're running a practice, but technology is your weak area, but there's an organization there that does the same thing, but they're very good with technology and automation and that kind of thing. With that concept, is that under external growth? Would you describe it? Right.
Yeah.
So tell us the different options on external growth.
So a couple of things to think about external growth is the first thing to keep in mind is why would I do it externally if I can do it internally? So this is really going to be focused on things that you don't think you can do well yourself, or you don't think you can do it quick enough. So sometimes it's around timing, other times it's around maybe capabilities or knowledge, excellence in terms of being able to do it. So in that case, it's something that we want to bring in that's going to make us stronger. We don't want to just outsource it through hiring somebody. We want to bring this in as a capability. So now the question is what's the mechanics for doing that? And this is where we've got a lot of different options. One is I can create a joint venture or a strategic alliance, right? So I can find people that I just want to partner with. And I want to differentiate the difference there. A joint venture is where 2 or more companies come together and they create a new company and they have equity in that new company. So that's one of the keys from a definitional standpoint. A strategic alliance is you could have the same 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 companies that come together, but there's no new company created and there's no equity in that new company. So that's where we just need to be really clear on what is it that we're doing and what is it we're trying to do. Now, let me give you an example. So joint ventures today that we see happening are very common in the electric vehicle area, where we need to partner with other people in order to be successful, to be able to bring in the technology, the capital, the access to the automotive players, the CapEx, the facilities, all the technical components that come together. And so in many cases, what you're seeing created today are joint ventures because they need this kind of single purpose organization that brings those disparate things together and is very mission focused on that particular market. We could also do it for a particular geographic area. It wouldn't work well, in my opinion, if it was a strategic alliance. Because then you're just sort of sharing things and helping each other, but there isn't that kind of that CEO P&L responsibility for, hey, we really want to take this and grow that business. But there's a myriad of other ways that we can be thinking about this. Another one that I like to highlight because I think it's not on many people's radar, and I think it could be, and that is minority investments. So I said at the beginning, one of the hardest parts of this process is integration. And that's why, Paul, when you asked me that question about who gets involved, I say I like to have the key people from the CEO's team to be involved in that process. Well, let's say I'm buying a company and I really need those people. To go back to Karene, your comment, maybe it's something I don't really know that well. Maybe I don't have people who would know how to manage this business very well. Well, in that case, maybe I don't want to buy 100% of that company. Maybe I want to buy 40% of that company because I want to make sure that those folks stay on and are economically incentivized to continue to grow and align that business with what it is that we're trying to do. So there may be some reasons why we want to think about that. Or it could be a majority investment, but they have a significant minority position. As opposed to, you're buying 100% or 90% or even 80% in some cases. We may want them to have a more meaningful role in this process. In some cases, we're going to have to look at an acquisition. I've sold companies where the owners have died. We weren't looking for a minority investment. The mission was sell the business. Owners may find in today's market that companies present themselves, they're for sale for whatever reason, you don't necessarily get a second chance at that. So part of it is about being prepared for, hey, maybe not only is it that's what's available, but that's really what I want. I want to buy 100% of this company and really integrate it into my business. And I'll give you two areas that we're primarily seeing that focused. First one is geographic. So let's say, Paul, you're in California and we're on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. Well, what do we got in between us? A huge piece of the country. So let's say we want to be able to make sure that we're positioned in every time zone. So we want someone that is in St. Louis, and we want someone that's in Denver, and we've got both of us, on the East Coast and the West Coast. So now we're a national player. So the geographic expansion through acquisition is probably the number one thing that we're seeing right now, because people just need a bigger footprint. It doesn't mean that you have to be national. It might be that you're super regional or you're expanding in the area in which you currently serve. The second one then would be backfilling that with capabilities. So I'm growing, but I'm growing, first of all, geographically, doing what I do now. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. I know how to do that. I know how to replicate that model. Now I may want to bring in some new products or services or capabilities that I may not be expert at, or I may be uneven expertise at that. And that's what we can then typically see folding in for kind of phase two. So it doesn't mean that this is the only way to think about it or what everybody should be looking at. It's just kind of a path that we see. And part of it is thinking about, for each of your companies, what makes sense for what your situation is, your industry is, what your company and your risk tolerances are.
Love it.
Great. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. So tell us more about that jellyfish, the low cost, being more sustainable. Tell us about that.
So you said earlier you haven't met a CEO that isn't looking for growth. And I agree with you. I mean, that certainly is. But one of the things that I also think CEOs and owners need to be worried about, or maybe worried is too negative a word, but needs to be on their radar, is have they invested in their business appropriately to survive today in the current environment? And one of the things that we have seen for, especially, and I'm generalizing now, but especially companies that have aging owners, owners that are older, one of the things that we have seen is that there has not necessarily been the investment and reinvestment in the company in terms of the people, the facilities, the CapEx, the technology. Those are the kind of the primary areas that we think about. So maybe they have, employees that have been with the company a long time, but maybe the company's outgrown them or the market's outgrown them, as an example. So maybe, and I'm not saying you have to get rid of those people. I'm saying maybe they need new training. Maybe they need to be paired up with people who bring other skills to them as well. Technology. I gave the example in the restaurant, but think about how much technology has, in particular, as a result of COVID, just really pivoted businesses.
Big time.
And have companies really invested in that? Have they taken advantage of it? And I think if you look around right now, you're seeing a lot of movement in that area. And then just the facilities. Do we have the right location? And are we kind of focused in on the right CapEx? And that's going to depend on the business. If you're a manufacturing business, do you have the appropriate equipment and machinery? If you're in professional services, do you have the right tools? Whether it be technology tools like we're using today, or other things that can help people through automated orders and things of that nature. So that's an important part that I think companies can really focus in on, kind of investing into their business to make sure that they're going to be able to survive. And that's why I call it the jellyfish.
Yeah, maybe love it. And I'm going to interject here because Karene, obviously David has been a speaker of your group and is doing things with the members that are great. I want to, before we hit a wall here on time, hear a little bit about your Vistage practice, and what are you building there and who are you looking for? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm taking a unique approach to building the practice and focusing on CEOs in Washington, D.C. I'm not aware of a group that is solely based in Washington, D.C. And we're seeing, younger CEOs emerging in the D.C. area. And my goal is to help CEOs achieve more in their personal life, in their health, and in their business. One of my fundamental beliefs is that a business will not surpass the growth of the CEO. So if they're looking to grow their business, we also need to grow the CEO as well.
Well said.
So the idea is to work on the growth of the CEO so that they can see revenues in their company. Another way of putting it is I look for leading indicators, pictures of them spending quality time with their family, pictures with them enjoying life, pictures of them in good health. And I call those leading indicators because if those things are in place, the revenue will come.
Mm-hmm.
And, looking to, grow the group and have quality people with the understanding that, put the ego behind, come in, be authentic, be vulnerable, share what's going on, be real, be authentic, because that's where the real growth happens. And that's why, when we invite someone like David into our group and we can talk about really what's going on with the company, honestly, then that's where he's able to add the most value, But, we have to be 100% vulnerable in these settings. So, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I always think it's insane. I mean, with Vistage is obviously you get access to incredible speakers like David, but also you're getting together every month, and these, CEOs that join your group help each other out, and they've got their personal board there, and they're talking about challenges, opportunities, growth, certainly. And that just seems amazing to me always when I hear about that environment.
Absolutely. I love doing it. I am addicted to results. So
I know you are. I know you are. We all know that about you.
Everyone knows it. Everyone knows
it. We know it. We know it. Well, this is great. I mean, we could talk forever about these topics. This is awesome. And I want to thank, both of you for being here. And I want to tell those folks listening, get connected with David, get connected with Karene. Their information is around this video. We stream this everywhere, wherever you're watching, YouTube, maybe LinkedIn, who knows where, Facebook even. But get connected, reach out. We'll have the ability for you to do that around this video. So thank you both for being here. Really enjoyed it.
All right.
Pleasure. Thank you.